Blockhead friends, we're back this week with another installment of Moda Blockheads 6. This week we're nearing the end. We're almost there. We're 2 blocks away from being done with creating all of our blocks, and then we'll be putting them all together. This week we have got a super fun big block to end out the series. This is an 18-inch block here. This one is called Criss-Cross Applesauce, and it's brought to us by Muir of Create Joy Project. So let's get started. All right, friends, as you've seen throughout this whole project, I have been working with the Ruby Star Basics for most of my blocks. And you may have noticed on some of them, I've also been doing a second color option. This week, I'm going to show you how to make the block in my second color option, because for those of you that know me, pink is my favorite color. So we are going to be making this block in pink. Now this week, I also want to tell you, we've been sewing along and we've been using, most of our blocks have been coming from my favorite color is still Moda. But we decided for Moda Blockhead 6, we wanted to give you 2 extra special blocks that aren't in that project, that are just exclusive for the Moda Blockhead 6. So that's the block that we're making here today, the big 18-inch block. It's got a couple of different units that we're going to be making in here, and both are super easy. And as always, be sure to print out your pattern. All right, so the first unit we are going to be making, and I will tell you this time on my chart, I decided I have not been using the color swatches on here, but this time I decided I was going to do that because I wasn't for sure where I really wanted my colors on this block. And so that I could get them placed all in the correct direction, I put my little color swatches here on my page. So this one, again, it is a big block. So we're going to start out with an 8-inch square, and we're going to do our stitch and flip method. We've done this previously. You can go back and watch some of our previous videos on how to do the stitch and flip. I'm going to do a quick reminder on it and give you a super fun tip on this block. So I took all of my, let's see, what size are these? These are 4.5-inch squares. And I took and drew a line right down the center, because we're going to stitch directly on that center line for this block. But you'll notice I also drew a second line on here that is a 1/2 inch away from where I had done that. And you're going to see what that's going to result in when we do a double stitch on this block. So draw all of your lines on your 4.5-inch background blocks for this corner unit, and meet me back here, and then we'll go over how we're going to sew the block together. Okay, so now you've got all of your lines drawn on there, and we're going to place our squares, and we're going to do it just like we've done in other units, where we're going to sew our 2 parallel blocks together side by side, and then we're going to come back and we're going to sew this 3rd block on here across the way. Now, on some previous blocks, there was a reason why we were going to press blocks to one way. There's no reason or no right or wrong way on how to press this block once you sew these seams on there. But you're going to take and you're going to sew directly on this diagonal line, the one that goes from corner to corner on that line. And then you're going to come back and you're going to sew over on the other 1/2-inch line here. I'm going to sew that right now, and I'll meet you right back here. All right, I am back after sewing on this block, and I want to show you how there is the double line of stitching. And you're going, why are we having to double stitch this? Does this block need extra holding? Does it need anything extra? No, it really doesn't. But what you're going to actually get is you're going to get bonus blocks from doing it this way. So you'll see I stitched directly down the center on that drawn diagonal line, and then I did do a second stitch on the one that's a 1/2 inch. You're going to take your ruler, and on this one, in previous videos you might have seen me not use a ruler to trim these off, but this one I do want to trim. I want to use a ruler and a rotary cutter to trim, because I'm going to trim in between, and I'm going to end up with a triangle. And I'm going to end up with another triangle. So then your block is actually gonna look like this, kind of funky and weird. And then you're gonna take and you're going to go and press. Now, actually, I would, just so you could see it better as to what I was doing, I had not previously pressed that. In the real world, I would have gone ahead and pressed this back before I did the trimming. Okay, so I would have pressed this back, then I would have flipped this over, and then I would have trimmed it. But I wanted you to be able to see better where everything was, because this kind of gets in the way. But as you're trimming, you want to make sure that you flip that top layer back and then trim it, and then it will flip over and it will lay perfectly down, and you can press that block down. So what did I get? I got 2 extra half square triangles. Look at that. And as you're making this, we're making 4 corners, and you're going to get 3 from each corner. So you're going to end up with 12 half square triangles, extra bonus half square triangles that you can use in a later project. You can throw it in your scrap bin, you can throw it in your scrap blocks, you can put them together, you can put this block on the back of your quilt. It's not used in this block, but it gives you some options later on, because we all know we don't like to throw away any kind of fabric whatsoever. So you're going to end up with, let me just show you here, you're going to end up with 8. Or no, you're going to end up with 12. You're going to end up with 12. I got to do the math really quick in my head here with the calculator brain. But you're going to end up with 12 of these half square triangles that you're going to be able to then figure out how to trim up and pick the smallest one and then trim them all to that same size. And you can create anything you would like out of your half square triangles. Now that we've got that fun little extra bonus block tip out of the way, you're going to have those 2 pressed back. I'm just going to finger press that really quickly. You're going to line up your 3rd square on that corner. Again, be sure that it doesn't end up lined up a little off, wonky, because if you line it up wonky and you sew it, it's going to end up wonky. So we don't want wonky corners. So be sure to line that up. Again, pin, if that is what would work for you, pin along there, and then you're going to trim it, and then you're going to press it out. And you're going to end up with 4 units that look like this. We're done with that unit. Let me gather my things for the next unit that we're going to make for this block, and meet me back here. We are back after making our 4 corner units, and as I got a little, not confused, but confused that there are actually 3 units within this block. You know, sometimes our brains just kind of go off into la la land and we don't remember, because this unit, the 3rd unit, is actually one that we have been making throughout this whole process. We've been making half square triangles, 2 at a time, half square triangles, or half triangle squares, whichever verbiage you like to refer to them. So I'm going to give you a quick refresher, but we'll have a link in the show notes with a direct link to on a more in-depth way on how to make half square triangles. So, but let me just give you a quick refresher. You're going to draw your line down the center of the square, and then you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch, or as I like to do, a scant 1/4 inch on either side of that, cut directly on that line, and then you're going to end up with 2 half square triangles. Now, these half square triangles, we're going to make 2 of these units, and we're going to end up with 4, because we're going to have a center unit of a little pinwheel with the half square triangles. Let me go finish this, and then I'll meet you back here and show you how the little pinwheel goes together really quickly. Okay, we're back. I've sewn that other half square triangle and I've trimmed them up. You're going to trim these up to 2 inches. That's the trim size, and then we're going to put it together and make our little pinwheel. Be sure that you've got your pinwheel spinning. You don't want to end up with one of the little cogs going the wrong way. Gives you a whole different block if you do that. So you want to lay it out like this, and pay attention, because this works with our next step that we're going to be doing, and you want to make sure that you've got your fabric in the correct position, because you don't want to have to be getting out your friend Jack the seam ripper, because the color placement on this pinwheel and the next block is crucial. So you're going to lay it out, so it's a 4-patch, sew them together, top, bottom row, press left and right, and then press out your center seam. So now that we've got that done, and see, look at this fun little pile right here. It just kind of gives me joy to see that. You know, you go to all the hard work of trimming up your little block. I like to leave it kind of on my cutting area sometimes, just to give me the satisfaction that I've gone to all that extra work to give me the perfect block. So that's my little scrap pile right there for you. All right, so let's move on to our next part of the unit. I'm going to move this over to the side. And our next unit is just a strip unit. It's a 2-strip unit. But again, I told you that you needed to pay attention to the direction of your pinwheel. And if you notice, the pinwheel was a lighter and a darker. If you've done the same thing, or just your 2 different fabrics, you want to make sure that the same fabric is to the left and to the right. And if you, on the pattern, it does show the dark and the light on the pattern, so that you can make sure that you keep everything in the same direction. So we're going to now sew these 2 strips together, and we're going to end up with a strip set like this. Okay. Next step is we're going to take these squares are 2-inch squares, I believe. Yep, 2-inch squares. Double check things. You're going to take your 2-inch square. You're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on that 2-inch square, and you're going to place them on the end of the 2-strip unit that you just made. Okay. And again, I would probably not pin, but you can pin right here. And again, pin perpendicular to your drawn line, and then you're going to stitch directly on that line. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so now we're back. I've sewn the one side. I did the stitch and flip method where I pressed it and then I trimmed it, so you can see that I did the trim there. I've come back and I've pinned my second corner on there. So we're going to end up with like a little arrow is what this is going to end up looking like. And I've got a little arrow right here. So, and I've also got the last part of the unit here. So you end up with a little arrow unit here. And then the final step is we have a rectangle that we're going to sew to the end of this. And so our final 3rd unit of this looks like this. So I've got 3 more of these to make. So I'm going to meet you back here, and then we're going to put the final block together. Okay, we're back after making our arrow and rectangle units. I have got my block all laid out, and we are ready to sew it all together. It is kind of a modified 9 patch, if you will. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces here that are to be sewn together. So I would sew 1 row together, I'd sew the 2nd row together, and then the 3rd row together, pressing my seams, figuring out there's no right or wrong way, again, to press your seams. You can press, what I did was I pressed out, I pressed this one in, and then I pressed those out when I did that together, and then voila, we got our block. It is a fun 18-inch block. You know, these would make a great pillow if you would want to go and, you know, if you've fallen in love with this block and went, oh, that would make a great pillow. It's an 18-inch, so it's a good size for a pillow to use as a pillow for that. And again, I want to point out that you want, because of the way that this is pieced together, to give you that continuity in here, to give you like it's spinning in the pinwheel, you want to make sure that you've got your fabrics placed in the correct order. That's all I've got for this week. Thank you again to Laura Muir of Create Joy Project for this super fun block to be added in. And be sure when you make your block, we would love to see your creations again. Be sure to post on our Moda Blockheads Facebook page and tag block number 23. 23 people, we've only got 1 more block to go. Okay, and we've also got our next block, number 24, is also going to be one that if you've been doing My Favorite Color is Still Moda, it is not one of those included. It's going to be a great surprise. So I'm super excited. I'm going to be sharing that one with you too. So join us back here next week as we complete the Moda Blockhead 6 series. Happy sewing, everyone. Bye.